Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and I have Liam, the wildebeest, who is back from his trip to Kruger, and we're all thrilled to see him back up on Jigger. And out on Wendy, we have James and Brian. Now, I believe that James is out on foot as we speak, following up on the female leopard tracks that we picked up on this morning around WildEarth camp. Now, for those of you who might have missed out, we had a bit of a surprise on the sunrise safari when Scott and myself had closed down for the end of show and we were driving back along Zebra Road on Arathusa. We bumped into a female leopard and Tingana. Now, I said that I believed it was Kwatile, and a couple of the viewers seem to have confirmed that. And now we have what seems to be absolute confirmation. It is indeed Kwatile. So I have raced back to Arathusa for this afternoon's drive. We're going to see if we can find them from where I left them. I have a sneaky suspicion that they're going to be in the drainage line. As you can hear, it's very, very breezy. It's quite windy, and although it is very, very warm, it's 28 degrees, which is something in Fahrenheit that I've forgotten. I'd have to convert it later. 82 degrees Fahrenheit. It is nice and warm. It's definitely heated up from this morning's drive. Now, if you are joining us for the first time, this is a live safari, so everything you're seeing here is happening right here in real time on Arathusa and Djuma game reserves in the Sabi Sands, which is why when we were out this morning, even though we'd closed down the show, we decided to start it up again and broadcast, just to show you that really, really flirty behavior of Kwatile. She seems to be desperately trying to get Tingana to mate with her. While we sat with him, which was probably for about half an hour, she wasn't terribly successful, but I think that he might have warmed up to the idea this afternoon. And without further ado, let us go and see what's happening there. Now, if it is Kwatile mating with Tingana, or at least trying to mate with Tingana, gives us some interesting theories to think about. Because apparently when James saw her last week, he picked up on what he thought might have been suckle marks, so evidence of young cubs that she was feeding. But obviously if she is mating, that probably isn't the case, but we can't be sure, because leopards, just like lions, sometimes exhibit the symptoms of false estrus. She might be adopting that as a technique to keep him distracted from her cubs. I'm not too sure. I had a chat with James about it this afternoon. We sort of went through all of the options, and maybe he suggested that those marks were just a coincidence, so the suckle marks weren't actually suckle marks, they just happened to look like it. And that to me also makes sense, because as far as I know, although we didn't actually get to see them in the end, we just saw Tingana right at the end, about a month and a half ago, they were photographed mating on Arathusa. And I'd like to be able to say that I spotted Kwatile far away, tucked in deep bush, or that I'd spent hours tracking her, but in reality, I would have had to be completely blind to have missed her. She was right in the middle of the road, which does sometimes happen out here. You just get lucky, and it keeps things exciting because you never know what's going to be around the next corner. What I have decided to do is approach, by the time we left them, they were on the northern safari donga. But what I've decided to do is actually approach from the southern end, because that was the general direction they were moving in. And I just want to loop around and make sure that I haven't missed them coming out somewhere here, just so that I don't spend too much time walking in the drainage line after them. Thing I do want to do is just hop on the Game Drive channel while I can and see if the other guys want to join me in the search. Have to wait my turn to join in this conversation. It sounds as though, and I'm sure many of the viewers have picked up on it on the dam cam, that there is an absolutely enormous elephant herd on its way through Arathusa Lodge once again. Carefully on some of the sandier roads for tracks. Afternoon stations, if you copy, I had Madoda and Mfazi Ingwe on Northern Safari Donga, and it looked like they were mobile south into the drainage line when I left them this morning. Copy. I'm also making my way to that area to see if we can follow up. Just chatting to Sean, it seems as though we're going to have a full brigade out to help us search for these leopards. I am really curious to see what comes of this. I actually almost felt sorry for her this morning, but it was quite incredible to watch just all of the vocalization that she was doing. She was running up to him and being really playful, jumping up and down, wrapping her tail around his head, and all the while growling in what I can only assume to be quite the alluring leopardess tone. Slightly. Now Kathleen, you were wondering if maybe if she does have cubs and those were suckle marks, why that might explain why Tingana was so reluctant to act upon her advances. And I suppose that is a possibility. It doesn't quite explain to me why she was imitating that estrus behavior, if she was imitating it, unless she is in false estrus. But I haven't heard of false estrus happening on a regular basis with females with young cubs. She's demonstrating as well what is known as the lordosis reflex, which comes with all females when they come into, or all female big cats when they're in estrus, where they lie down and lift their pelvis up slightly and swish their tail out of the way. She did do that repeatedly. It was clearly her who was initiating all of the advances. So although it could explain why, if she wasn't in true estrus, he wasn't interested in acting on it, I'm not too sure that it gives us a complete explanation as to why she was behaving the way she was. She also had a little bit of a cut on the back of her right shoulder blade. Didn't look like it was impacting her in any way, but it was there. Now that could be a hunting injury, but it also could well be him acting out in aggression, not in major aggression, but as many of our regular viewers will know, the big cat mating process does come with a little bit of heightened emotion and a little bit of teeth baring. I'm going to go really painfully slowly here around this drainage line, because it's so easy to miss a leopard lying down. I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to see them, just because not only is it of course an awesome sighting, but I am really curious to see what he's doing still, because she was clearly following him, clearly interested. And I'm looking to see if I can find an explanation for this kind of behavior. So keep your eyes peeled for a flash of spots. Luckily I have eagle-eyed VM on the back to help as well. If I were a leopard, and this is of course supposition, and I've also found that 99.9% of the time where I think the leopard should be, they usually aren't. But if I were a leopard, I would be tucked away in some thick vegetation, sheltering from the wind. And do provide the perfect cover. I've just heard word that James is out looking for Madiba. Now, I'm sure many of you have been following the saga of what has happened over the last 2 days. Oh, excuse me, dusty. But for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, one of our favorite young leopard cubs on the show, he's just over a year old. He's been starting to show some independence, and he was also starting to show evidence that he was starting to hunt. And unfortunately, one of his first prey items that he did pick happened to be a stray dog that wandered in from one of the neighboring communities. Now, we've spoken a great deal with the more regular viewers about the fact that there is a risk, however slight, that that dog might be a carrier of rabies. There has been an outbreak in the area of Hoedspruit, and that is always a huge concern out here. But we did manage to get the dog, and it has been sent off for testing at Onderstepoort. Luckily, the Sabi Sands management have decided that as soon as we do find Madiba, we're going to call them in straight away, and they're going to give him a vaccine against rabies, regardless of whether or not the tests come back positive. So they're essentially adopting a better safe than sorry approach, and just giving him that little bit of an extra chance in case those test results do come back positive. And with that vaccine, he'll have one as soon as possible, and then he will have one a little bit later. It will be 21 days later, and all it will be was a dart that's filled with the vaccine, and then they will shoot it into his bottom or into one of the thick muscle masses. It will drop out naturally. He might get a bit of a fright, but it is overall far and away in his just going to have a quick chat with Sean about where I saw these leopards. This was exactly where I saw these leopards. Hello, hello.
Morning.
Good morning, how are you? Good, thanks. How's it? Last time I saw him, he was on that termite mound. Go for it. Yeah, please. I'm going to just maybe do a loop around. If you're going to walk from here. Okay, cool. I'll go drive power lines, sharp. Yeah, look like Kwatile, as far as we know. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, very, very pretty leopard. Yeah. Okay, enjoy. Okay, cheers guys. Cool. One of the brilliant Arathusa trackers is on his way to follow up. Head down into the drainage line. And we are going to loop around the other side and just follow up from the other side of the drainage line. Let's see what we can find. Cool. Enjoy. Cheers guys. Bye. Bye. Off goes Sean and Reese, his tracker. Now that is a very encouraging sight to see. Two people who are very, very experienced in finding animals in this area. And I'm sure that Reese, the tracker in particular, I'm sure that he knows all kinds of secret hiding places within this drainage line. I'm sure he's been working here for many years, and that gives a level of experience and an advantage that you just can't beat. Now we're considering once again the possibility that if she does have cubs, Jennifer, you were wondering if it's possible that she might be faking and he's onto her and that's why he can't be bothered. And this is a really difficult question for me to answer without giving you supposition. I'll give you the options. One is that she's entered a false estrus, and the reason I say that is because to the best of my knowledge, and I can be corrected if I'm wrong, to the best of my knowledge, that action, that behavior of female leopards is entirely hormonally based. They can't just turn it on and off at will, and they can't act. They're not like humans in that they can pretend. But they can go into a false estrus, which imitates the hormones, and it has been known to happen in lions, which means that it could well happen in leopards as well, particularly lions with small cubs. Hello, big giraffe. Got a big male giraffe here. Nice, beautiful bull. On a mission to somewhere. I'm also just keeping an ear out because apparently that enormous ellie herd was somewhere close to the lodge just around here. And there, if we have a look at him, you can see those thick ossicones on the top of his head and a rubbed bald at the top, and that's a clear indication that it is a male, apart from the obvious signs, which sometimes aren't so obvious if they're hiding behind a bush. But that is one of the best ways of identifying male and female giraffe. He's definitely a nice mature bull. Maybe somewhere in the region of, sure, let's say well over 10 years old easily. He hasn't got that deep, deep, dark, almost black color that some of the really older bulls have. Okay, let's see if we can just get a slightly better angle on him. He's possibly feeling a little bit camera shy. totally relaxed body language. I think he just spotted something over there that was more appealing than the guari bushes over here. There we go. I don't want to shift any further just because he is alert to us. The minute the animals stop what they're doing and start to look at you, it's worth just switching off and letting them relax a little bit. There, that long tongue just poking out as he's munching. And that tongue can be up to 50 centimeters, so half a meter. And if I had to convert quickly in my head, that's probably around 20 inches in length. So really, really long and incredibly dexterous. And the perfect tool for stripping guari leaves away from their branches. That's exactly what he's doing. And you might see that dark tinge to the tongue as it pokes out every now and again. And that is because it is infused with melanin, which many of you know will give you those dark freckles that you might get on your skin. It is a very dark pigment, but it's also a very good toughening pigment. So it helps to impregnate the tongue and stop it from getting cut by any thorns or sharp branches. And amazing to think with that long neck down all the way to that stomach, that these animals are ruminants. Just think about how far those balls of cud, the balls of grass, have to be passed back up into the mouth in order for them to chew them a second time around. Definitely one of my favorite animals to sit and watch. They just impart such a sense of tranquility somehow. Must be to do with their size. He's just heading off, tucking himself away behind the spike thorns. Let's see if we can get one more nice view of him before we continue on our search for these mysterious mating leopards who are causing so much confusion in my head. And I will tell you a little bit more about my theories as to what's happening. This is probably as good as we're going to get for this giraffe. He's slowly moving into quite thick vegetation. I get so used to sitting and watching them and seeing them that sometimes I have a sudden realization as to how bizarre they really do look. So totally different from anything out here, anything else out here. Munching away at the guari bush. Now this big boy is out here all on his own at the moment. And Elaine, welcome to the Sunset Safari. You were wondering if they are solitary animals by nature. And the truth is, with giraffe, it just kind of depends on the mood that they're in. They don't have any kind of set herd structure. Obviously you will see females together with their calves. Sometimes you see groups of males from across all age spectrums. Sometimes you see mixed groups of females and males. It's what's known as a social aggregation. So it ebbs and flows, and they kind of just decide to join up with some giraffe for a while and then other giraffe for another time. Just having a look at what's happening on that side. I think Sean might have some action, but it is very, very thick on this side. I just want to hop onto the Game Drive channel and ask. Is Sean for Jamie? Have you guys got them there? Okay, copy, perfect. When I'm done here, I'll head across and give you guys a hand. Okay. Now Sean has picked up on their tracks. They're going straight south across the open area. And I would really like to go and be a little bit helpful. Maybe even hop out of the car and take a walk with Reese, the tracker. In the meantime, I believe that James is waiting for you so that he can update you on what he's been up to for this afternoon's Sunset Safari. So we're going to head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later, hopefully with those two leopards, so we can see what they've been up to.
Lion tracks. Hello everybody, welcome to Wendy, where the communications issues are not yet resolved. My name is James Hendry. I'm wielding my communication device like a disciplinary weapon, so I can hit Brian, who's on camera today, dressed very smartly in a WildEarth t-shirt, not shirt, t-shirt, a proper khaki bush shirt. So he's looking pretty bushy, and he's on camera today. We've come to this clearing where I'm going to stop the car so that we might observe 3 pigs and some those are the pigs, and some impala. Now, you are on a live Game Drive Safari, as I'm sure you've realized by now, unless you have just tuned in which case you are most welcome. You have missed some of the drive. Where have you been? You are welcome to talk to us, and we do love it when you talk to us. #SafariLive. If you are tweeting like a, what should we say today, a magpie shrike, beautiful lilting call, or questions at wildearth.tv if you wish to address us by way of email. As I have said before, the communications via the South African Post Office, now into its 10th month of a strike, are totally useless. Not entirely unlike some of the communications coming out of Wendy today. Anyway, we are online. We are with a couple of pigs, and we've come into this particular area to see if we can't find tracks of Madiba, a young male leopard aged just over a year. We did find his tracks on the main road just to the west of where we are now. Don't know where they've gone. They did seem to head off north and then east into the block where just before you joined us, so we'll carry on following up around here for the next little while and see if we can't pick him up. And I believe Jamie did tell you that he is going to be darted. That means that he's going to be well, basically shot with a pellet gun, if you like, and a dart will go into his rump and quickly spray in some what they call rabicin, which is an inoculation against rabies. He will bite it out, probably growl a little bit, and then get on with his life. So that's what's going to happen there. It's very good news. And in case you have been hiding under a rock, what happened yesterday was that Madiba caught a domestic dog, and so this is just a precautionary measure to make sure that that magnificent little leopard, who's been so very kind in letting us watch him, and who with whom we've spent many happy hours, is going to be absolutely fine. Right, there go the pigs. I'm just listening to the game drive radio. Again, this is coming through live, so you can probably hear it talking. The voice of Aubrey, very restrained is our friend Aubrey. There's a guide at Djuma, which consists of 2 lodges just behind where we are now, and he is going to help us try and find Madiba around this particular area. I believe there's a question from Cameron, aged just 5 years, about whether Madiba is going to have to go to the doctor. Cameron, Madiba is not going to go to the doctor. Out here, remember, with the cats that we have here, you can't just sort of pop them in a basket and take them off to the vet, because if you do that, well, they're just a bit big really, and they get a little angry, and you don't want an angry 1-year-old leopard. They are very strong and can get very upset very fast. So what we do, Cameron, is that he will be inoculated with a dart, and that dart will be fired by a little rifle like this, and it will be a little bit sore for him. It'll be like having a sore injection, but because he's a big tough leopard, he'll be fine. So he doesn't go to the doctor, he will stay here, and the doctor will come here, and we'll just shoot him with that little injection, and while he probably will feel a little bit of pain, it'll be much better than him getting sick. So it's just like when you perhaps have had to have a couple of injections. It's exactly the same thing for young Madiba. It continues to be a rather interesting day weather-wise. I am not hearing much from the final control. I'm saying that as a signal to them, not because it's relevant to your enjoyment of the drive. And so it was started off very cold this morning, and it remained cold, and this wind came up and it was pretty foul, and we didn't take off any layers, and then suddenly at about 12 o'clock it got quite warm. Not hot, but warmish, and now you can see the clouds are starting to build, and there's actually quite a nice atmosphere around the place, as there has been from this morning, and you can see the clouds are building over the Drakensberg mountains there to the west. I'm just going to... I am now copying the final control, who I believe will probably have a question for me. Get it now. And Paul, you are observing that the bush has just turned green. Well, you and Brian are of the same opinion. We were driving along here and he was just saying, you know, every day it turns greener and greener, and it is astonishing, especially in those clearing areas, that the bush has turned so green. The grass, of course, depends largely on not being competed with by the trees, and the trees in the clearings are obviously not there, that's why they're clearing, and so the grass roots don't have much to compete with. So in those clearings where the nutrition is high and there's been some water, the grass flushes extremely fast, and it's so exciting to see. It's just the most wonderful time of the year. The birds are starting to breed, the grasses are coming up, the trees are starting to flush with new leaves, and it's just it's a time of rediscovering the bush all over again. And so one of my very favorite times of year. So the tracks of the young leopard came up from there, and then we think came towards where those power lines you might be able to see in front of us are, and that's where we're going to continue our search. Now, while we're looking for this young male leopard, as the sky starts to turn an ominous grey colour, Mavis, you would like me to tell you if I think Madiba will call if he feels threatened for his mother. Mavis, I do not believe he will. Remember that a leopard, when it calls, makes itself a lot more obvious. Now, if Shadow is perhaps miles away, and for those of you who don't know, Shadow is young Madiba's mother. If he's feeling threatened, if something threatens him and he then starts to call, that thing, whatever it is, will know exactly where he is. He has no idea where Shadow is. She might be miles away. She won't hear him. So it would just actually be very counterproductive. All the cats, when they get into trouble, especially the solitary ones, will go completely silent and they'll try and hide. A leopard's greatest defense is its ability to hide and disappear. Now this of course makes it very difficult to find them in the bush, but it also makes them one of the most successful predators that Africa and certainly the world has ever known. So their strategy is highly successful. They are spread from all the way in the southern Cape up through southern Africa, East Africa, into the rainforests. The only bit of Africa that they're not in is the main desert of the Sahara. You can probably find them in the Atlas Mountains north of that. All the way around North Africa they used to occur, certainly across the Isthmus of Suez and into some of the deserts around Jordan, and then further west, all the way into the far east of Russia. And that's the same species of leopard. Different subspecies as you go that have become separated over time, but it's the same species. Very successful, magnificent leopard that we are trying to find right here. So an excellent question here about the upcoming medication and inoculation of young Madiba from Larry. Larry, you want to know, will he become nervous of the game drive vehicles as a result of the darting? Larry, I don't think so, you know. I think that he'll hardly notice. He'll be lying on the ground or on a termite mound, as is his general want, and suddenly he will feel a wasp sting in his bottom, or a fairly substantial wasp sting in his bottom, and I think that will be it. He will probably leap up and down and may move off, but I don't know that he'll even associate it with the vehicle that he's around. And we're now on what's known as the Triple M break, and between us, this is the boundary between us and Arathusa, where Jamie is, where you saw her earlier, and so we can cross this particular boundary, and obviously the animals don't know the difference. It's a little bit difficult to track here, of course, because it's a main access road, and so there are lots and lots of cars. And this is where we first saw his tracks earlier today, just down there. So I'm driving very slowly to see if we can't spot him. Surely not. Surely it can't be that easy. No, it's not that easy, everyone. It's a log. It is a log. It is a log. And just to let you know, we don't know where Shadow is, but there were female leopard tracks around here earlier today. So it's possible that she's also in this area. So Mavis, if you're worried about where Shadow is, she might be around here. I'm going to show you what I did see, which will probably make you lose respect for me. Brian, can you see the log there? That looks vaguely-ish, leopardish-ish coloured-ish, sort of. Yeah. That's it. Yes, that's what I saw. Yes, I'm just checking with my binoculars. It is in fact a decaying piece of stump, not Africa's premier wildlife target, Panthera pardus.
A fine spot.
Yeah, I think so. There we go. suspicious looking log. On we go. I will keep looking over the side of the car to check for more tracks. And we had an interesting question once from somebody who asked me why it is that I only look over the right-hand side of the car. Do animals only walk on one side of the road? And I suppose a fairly valid question. The only reason I don't look out the other side, of course, is because I'm not 7'3" and therefore can't lean over. That's what Brian's for. Brian's is, apart from filming me and whatever animals we manage to find, his job is to look over to the left-hand side of the car and see if anything walks on the left-hand side of the road. At this stage, not much. So I suspect he's gone into this block over here somewhere, but these tracks are not that fresh. I think they're probably from last night sometime. And I'm quite enjoying the fact that I have to use this handheld radio because it does give me a certain amount of authority. I feel I can point with great authority and vigor into the wilderness, emphasize my point. And I can point out tracks sometimes if I find them. I haven't driven over them already. So this access road that we're driving down now, in the hope of finding a beautiful young male leopard, leads to a lot of the lodges in the northern part of the Sabi Sands. And they include lots of the people we passed when we were on game drive, from Nkoro, Cheetah Plains, Chitwa Chitwa, Hoffman's, Arathusa, Simbambili and Shirley's. I think that's about all of them. And of course some private lodges on Torchwood and on Biffle's Hook. And that's why finding tracks on this road after a day like today is not easy. I'm just going to get a quick update from them on the radio. I'm just listening. Oh, did you pick up any further tracks?
I negative, just where the last one of them.
The last tracks I saw were going north along Triple M towards the power lines and on Triple M. I did check the power lines, but I am live, so I may have missed them crossing the road.
Okay. The power line, the one close to Vietela or power line just close to Triple M.
No, the power lines that go on to Vietela. So there are a few of us in the area looking for him. And Aubrey, of course, has a tracker sitting on the front of his vehicle, which is very helpful. So while we're driving along at snail's pace, looking for sign of leopard, what are they looking at, you suppose, Brian? Are they coming this way? We're just going to have a quick listen here to see if there are any alarm calling birds or squirrels or any such alarmed animals that have maybe seen a young male leopard. Genevieve in New York, you obviously noticed that the Salati males, one of them has a canine that's been broken off. Now, what that means is, well, you also asked us, do you think he broke it trying to get calcium from bones? I think he probably broke it in during the course of normal feeding. They do use those canines extensively when they're feeding. I suspect the canines get quite a lot in the way when they're trying to grind the meat off the bone. So what their molar teeth are called carnassials, and they go over each other like that, and that scrapes the meat off the bone. But because the canine is obviously in the mouth, and you know, things are different in awkward shapes, I suspect sometimes the canines get in the way, and after a lot of use they might break off. They could also, of course, get abscesses and become weakened, and in so doing they might snap off. I don't think it's because of a specific need or desire to bite into bones for calcium, and if they did do that, they'd use the back teeth. They wouldn't use the canines to do that. Those canines are specifically for killing. They are the ones that puncture the back of the neck of their prey, that dig in and give them grip if they're trying to kill a buffalo or a wildebeest over the snout like that, or clamp round over the windpipe, depending on what they're trying to kill. So that's what the canines are basically for. And you say you've seen Mvula, who is a male leopard of, I think, around 11 years. You say that you've seen Mvula's also got a missing tooth, and I'm sure it's missing for exactly the same reason as that. Nice one, Genevieve. I can't hear anything alarm calling. I'm also slightly suspicious of that very stationary car just up in front of us, and it may be that it's from Aratuza and therefore cannot speak with us. So we're just going to go and have a look-see if they don't have something fascinating up there. But after all, that is why we're here, Brian, to find fascinating things. So this is round about where he was last seen, that young male leopard. So because he's not with his mum, I think it's quite likely that he is still around here somewhere with any luck. I'm just going to chat here with Andrew, who is from Cheetah Plains, and he will maybe be able to give us a little bit of an update. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm full of joy.
Good, good, thanks.
Yeah.
There was some dog moving.
Oh, good. Okay, thanks. Tractor, that, where are you heading to?
I'm heading towards the dam.
Okay, alright.
So yeah, I'm looking for the 7 Yamazan.
Okay, alright.
But I found it already.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks guys.
Bye-bye. That was Andrew from Cheetah Plains. Highly experienced guide, and he said he saw some elephants going through here, so I'm seeing to see if we can't pick them up. It is very thick in here though, so I wonder if we won't come round the other side. Right, so while we look for these elephants and perhaps tracks further evidence of Madiba, we're going to pop across to Scott, who is on foot with Steph and Jean-Dre, and they are going to tell you a bit about what they've found on foot, and I will see you a little bit later.
Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the walking safari. It's so exciting, and I really loved the last walk I did with all of you guys, so it's good to be back out here again. And wasn't it exciting wondering what lay ahead on M? Hopefully James will be able to find you those elephant that was seen. Failing that, Madiba, who I believe the other vehicles are now searching for, would be equally good. Now, a few little things that I must mention while we are on foot. It's very different to being on the vehicle. Jean-Dre is on camera, and there's a third person who is Steph. He's kind of behind the scenes, and he is carrying a rifle in case we do get ourselves into a dangerous scenario. It's certainly not our intent, and we're going to be looking for smaller things to show you, like this tiny little dropping that I've picked up, and this, interestingly enough, is the dropping from a scrub hare. And the reason why it's of particular importance today is because I forgot the ash sock that we use with old ash from the campfire to tell us which way the wind is blowing. And fortunately, where we started our walk, it was in an area where I knew a lot of scrub hares spent time, so it wasn't difficult to collect this little handful of droppings. Oh, we lost one, but that's fine. And look at how perfectly they did show us which way the wind's blowing. As I break it up, it's very fine, and as you can see for now, the wind is blowing from my right to my left. So that's something very important that we're going to have to use whilst walking so that we don't startle any animals. It's important to know about all of our surroundings here, and it's quite thick. If we take a little bit of a look around, we could quite easily bump into elephants or buffalo or rhino here, and these animals are all potentially dangerous, and we do not want to get into a dangerous situation. And find you small things along the way. A small thing that we are looking for is a female leopard called Karula, and her tracks were heading from the camp, which is kind of behind us, towards us. And we've started fine combing this area to see if we can find any tracks or sign of her. I heard a tree squirrel alarm calling in that direction, so we're going to take a short walk along there. But I spotted something earlier. It is the old hoof of a buffalo, so it's a bit of a crime scene here, actually. And this lion would have been attacked by, or sorry, buffalo would have been attacked by a lion, I guess. And it's one of the two cloves on a buffalo's hoof. There would naturally be another one on the right-hand side like this. And what's nice about this hoof is that you can see that it's hollow inside. So it's got a keratin outside, no different to the horn of an animal. And as I reverse, you could also almost imagine if this was a horn on the head of an animal, it wouldn't be very spectacular. But it does help to explain the difference between horns and antlers. And horns are hollow with a bony inner. So this would be white, solid bone that you could actually pull off the horn once the animal has died. But it's just the keratin sheath that you see on the horns of animals, that brown layering, whereas antlers grow throughout the life, only grow seasonally, unlike the horns of antelope, and they are shed. And they don't have this hard keratin sheath. They've actually got a felt kind of very thin layer of skin that grows, and as well as some very fast-growing bone. So that's the difference between an antelope and a deer in terms of the horn. Interestingly, look here. I've just noticed, it's going to be hard to see, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my torch, and if I shine in here, I've just seen quite a few bugs. How am I shining there, Jean? Is it okay? Can you see? Can you see all those bugs in there? They're right up in the top corner. A whole bunch of bugs, and these must be possibly a form of the horned borer moth. And I know it may be difficult to see. We're trying new things here, so apologies if it's not working, but there are a few little bugs in there that are either seeking shelter in here or have the unique ability of being able to break down keratin, which is a very hard substance to break down. Anyway, there were a whole lot of bugs. You don't want to disturb them too much. So we'll put the hoof back, found it, which was here. It was upside down, and continue off in the direction that we heard these tree squirrels. It really is so wonderful seeing all the fresh growth out here, green shoots sprouting. After only 24 hours of rain, I'm preferring that we release. There's pieces of green everywhere. Such a welcome of scenery. I think you may be able to feel and absorb all this fresh green growth while being on foot, while you're sitting around in the vehicle with Jamie, and this afternoon you may be able to pick up finer details. That's a great thing about a bushwalk. It's the small things that we don't get to necessarily show you while we are on foot, while we are on the vehicle. And maybe I was wrong, because Paul's already sent in a comment saying that he noticed that it's got a lot greener, and that was why you were driving around with James. You're 100% correct. Watch out for the little stump there, Jean-Andre. Something that is important for me to touch on is how difficult it is for Jean-Andre to do the camera work here. He can't see where he's stepping because he's so focused on filming that I'm going to have to help him along the way sometimes, and we've just encountered some nasty thorns here. And what I'll do is I'll actually try and break off a branch and show you these nasty thorns. This is the notorious buffalo thorn, which is both a straight thorn and a hooked thorn. And it's a very nasty one to get caught in. In Afrikaans, one of the local African languages, a derivative of Dutch, it's also known as a wagabiki boom, which means wait a bit tree, because you will certainly be waiting a bit if you get caught in it. It's got some cultural importance as well in the country, so it's not only important for genre to avoid them whilst we're walking through here, but it's important for the Zulu tribe of South Africa. And they'll use these branches for ceremonies to collect and gather the souls of people, family members who have passed away. And what they'll do is they will break a branch from a tree within the home area of where the soul needs to be returned, and then they'll travel with it by bus or by plane or by foot or by bicycle, get to wherever the person has passed away and perform a ritual. And with this stick they will gather the soul of the person who has passed away, and when they travel back to bury this person and let them rest in peace, what they will do is they'll actually pay for a bus fare or a plane fare to transport the soul back. So an interesting little traditional story there, a well-known one, but one that I really love. So that's the buffalo thorn that we're avoiding. He also has a large antenna coming up the back out of his, which is about 20 pounds in weight. So a little bit different to sitting on the vehicle, so bear that in mind. He has some waves alarm going behind us. This time of the year, they're communicating with one another and not necessarily alarming at a leopard. And we've just got a question through from Pamela, and while we get comfortable here next to the skull, I can explain to Pamela that yes, of course I am nervous of running into any dangerous animals, i.e. lion or elephants, but I've gone through rigorous training, spent a lot of time on foot with mentors who have had countless encounters with dangerous animals, and they teach you how to react. And interesting enough, animals are a lot more predictable than humans. So you'll find a lot of the time, provided you respect animals and give them their distance and listen to their warnings, they're not going to run after you and chase you. They don't see us as food sources, and most of the time they're actually quite scared of us and will prefer to run away than risk confrontation. Now, the reason why I have these little scrub hair droppings to check the wind every now and then is one method that we use to avoid getting into trouble. The other thing is looking for tracks or fresh dung. Here's some elephant dung right next to me, but it's very dry, and if I turn over, you can even see one or two very small holes where termites have already begun breaking this dung down. I can't see their holes under the sand yet, but they will eat from they'll have their burrows in the ground up into the dung, which is lying like this. But just like a sign like that, this was very wet, hot, that would be a clue that we need to be careful. There could be elephants in the area. Also, Pamela, I did mention earlier, Steph is around. He does have a rifle. We don't intend on ever using it, but it is a method of last resort. In all my time, Pamela, I've never had to shoot an animal, and I've spent countless times on foot. So, interesting. This is what I love about being open. You get to find all these interesting things that we get to show you very easily. And this is the skull of take a guess. Some people might be thinking crocodile, but the teeth are on. If you look over here, those are the molars of a herbivore. Interestingly, this is going to give it away for you. What animal, when looking at you out of their eyes, has got two growths coming out of the end of their mouth or upper muzzle? It's a warthog. And this is where the top tusks, the very big prominent tusks that are easy to see, would emerge from. And interestingly enough, from the bottom jaw, there's a second set of tusks. But they are the ones that you actually need to be careful of, even though you don't notice them. And that's because they're thin, razor-sharp tusks that will occlude and rub against the bigger, bolder tusks that you think are the dangerous ones, but actually aren't, every time the warthog chews. So it does have two sets of tusks on each jaw, top and bottom. And isn't it wonderful the way Mother Nature preserves interesting things like this for us to look at? Warthogs, like most pigs, have got very complex and powerful senses of smell, and that's where a lot of the smell will be processed through that cavity over there, and they'll use their nose not only to smell but also like a little shovel. And what warthogs do is when they're feeding, I'm just going to put rabbit droppings down in a little pile safely there, they go down, instead of feeding on their feet or their hooves, they'll drop down onto their nose like this, and then use their nose like a spade to dig up that they can then nibble on. So quite a normal maneuver for a pig, but quite nice to see, and it's something that we will be seeing a lot more of in the summer months. I think we're going to start seeing a lot more warthog running around, and one thing that we can really look forward to is seeing the piglets. They are such cute little animals. They've got huge bursts of energy and go chasing one another around, and they are tiny, so that's something to look forward to. Haven't seen any piglets yet, but they should be on the way soon. Now, we mustn't forget we are looking for Karula, so as we walk through here, please make sure to keep your eyes peeled for a flick of a tail. And we've just got a comment through from Cecilia saying that the dung looks like shredded wheat. I'm guessing that was the elephant dung that we looked at earlier. And I agree with you, that did look very much like shredded wheat, Cecilia. And what you'll find interesting about elephant's dung is it varies throughout the year. At some times of the year you'll see lots of pieces of bark and branches and roots. Other times of the year you'll just see grass. Then probably in February or March their dung will be covered with the marula fruits, only partially digested as they pass through the elephants. But it is something to remember when looking at elephant dung. You can almost age it because you know what they feed on at the different times of the year. Even though it's a wide variety of different plants, it's usually the grasses now when they're fresh and green, and the bark and the roots during the winter months. So now we have something very, very interesting, and that is that an animal that a lot of you would love to see that we have yet to be able to show you on Safari Live has dug this hole, and it's called an aardvark. Sometimes if the area is fresh, the area where it would have been sitting and actually almost where the tail has made a line in the sand, digging isn't fresh, and it's gone here and massive claws to dig the sand out that you can all see around me here. What it's done is it's burrowed into a termite mound that it's been able to feed on with a very long tongue that it slithers into all the holes, and it's an expert digger that only moves around late at night in this area. Other parts of Africa, they can move quite readily during the day, but the aardvark, an anteater in this area, only operates at night. One day we'll get lucky though. Just heard something off in the distance. It could have been elephants trumpeting. And a breeding herd of elephants is very dangerous on foot, and we would prefer to avoid that at all costs, unless this. And interestingly enough, Brent, luckily enough this morning, got to see some elephants on foot with Jandra and Steph. I'm sure a lot of you got to see that as well. What a rush, how exciting. But in this area, it's very windy conditions. I'd prefer not to bump into them. So I'm going to bank that information, elephants trumpeting to the north, and certainly keep that in mind if we have to head in that area later. And Pamela, this is a good example of your situational awareness, your awareness of surroundings help greatly when walking through the bush. If you know what to listen for, know what signs to look for, the dangers become a lot easier to identify and to avoid. Whereas if you don't know what to listen for, or your ears aren't trained, then you could very quickly get into trouble. Now, the great thing about this time of the year is we've got the fresh growth coming, but you can still very clearly see game trails move from points of interest, water holes, feeding areas, and they allow the animals, just like we travel on highways, to move easily. And it certainly helps us when walking in the bush. It will change, and the growth that we expect here, the rain is immense. We'll probably only be able to see a quarter as far as we can see now, and you're going to have to be more cautious when walking in the summer months. Come on, Karula, where are you hiding? So good places to check when walking are termite mounds, and leopards love lying up on termite mounds on a cool afternoon like this. She wouldn't be in the shade necessarily, so let's creep along here. Make sure you don't trip on the buffalo leg bone and hip bone along the way. Mind your step. Maybe this is the other hoof that we were missing earlier. And another buffalo hoof, probably the work of the Matimba males a couple of months ago. And we mustn't lose focus though, because we just want to creep up and check carefully. So if we take a closer look now, I've just moved around into an area where we can see the termite mound. So let's write this termite mound off. Karula is not on top of it. Also important to remember on hot afternoons, which I said we are not experiencing this afternoon, simply the way you walk around a termite mound could get you into trouble or not. Now, if it was very hot, the sun was setting, one side of the termite mound would be in shade. So if you walked around hugging the termite mound and then popped into the shade where an animal might be fast asleep, that's a good example of how you may startle it. So, hot days, you're approaching a termite mound, always give the shady section a wide berth. That way, limiting your chances of killing something. So we can continue though on our wide berth. And another question has just come through. Thanks so much. Isn't it wonderful how we can communicate while walking on a live safari with people all around the world? It's wonderful to have you with us. And as much fun as it is being on foot, we're going to get you back here a little bit later. But Jamie's found something quite interesting. It's not a fairy tale story, so don't be ready for it. It's a little bit of a harsh scene, but Jamie has found something, so we're going to send you across to her and catch up with you a little bit later on the trail of Karula. Remember this.
Welcome back, and Viam and myself are still in the vicinity of where these leopards were last seen, and just before it disappears I have seen a daker with probably the worst broken leg I've ever seen before. So just to warn you in advance, if you are sensitive and this might disturb you, then perhaps now is the time to look away. He is quite far away now, and I'm not going to drive up too close because I don't want to make it run more than it has to. It cannot bear any weight on that leg. And when I first saw it, it ran away from me, or it bolted briefly, and the leg went from side to side instead of front to back. Very, very seriously injured. And I would say that its chances of survival with a break like that are probably very slim. Sure, but right in the vicinity of where these two leopards' tracks were last seen. I don't know how he got that injury. It would be guesswork. I would guess and say that he maybe, whilst running away from something, he might have hooked his leg in a hole. Could be, or even hit it on a stump, caught his ankle in some way, and it snapped right at the hock. So right at the elbow joint. Oh! You can see, I don't want to I know that the view isn't spectacular, but I really don't want to get too much closer to where he is. You can see he's not putting any weight on that left front leg at all. Shame, poor little guy. That's definitely going to make him an easy meal for a marauding leopard. Now, I thought that we were at the end of our cold front, but it seems to be that something is blowing in. So what I'm going to do is just, shift forward slightly so that we can have a look at the clouds that are rolling in. And it seems to be the front of a cold front, which doesn't fill me with any particular joy. Look how spectacular the clouds look, though. Really, really pretty. It's interesting, it's coming in from the west. She almost feels as though it's coming in from the northwest, which is usually it comes more from a southerly direction. But the wind is swirling. I'm sure you can hear that if you're listening and have your audio up. It's really making things difficult. But for the two leopards that are somewhere in this area, it is perfect hunting weather. That wind will serve as a great way of distracting the prey animals' attention and just sort of disadvantaging them in terms of compromising their sense of smell and their sense of hearing. Now, just if you're wondering what's been happening with these leopards, why I'm sitting out here on the Arathusa airstrip, is there's 5 guides all working around this area, desperately trying to follow up on where these leopards have gone. And it seems to me that they have grown wings and flown from their position of their last tracks. So we went up to where we last saw them, they crossed south onto Magic Willy Open, and from there there's 2 trackers out on foot walking that block just to see. There's lots of hiding places for 2 leopards under guari bushes, so that's where I would guess they would be tucked away. But I don't want to add a 3rd person into the mix and go walking through that block as well, just because on a base level, mating animals tend to be a little bit more alert and a little bit more skittish. So I don't want to disturb them in any way. I think 2 people walking in that block is enough. But I do have a quiz for you, and that was actually something that was spotted by eagle-eyed VM. Let me just grab it. I wasn't too sure about the ethics of this particular poo, or at least the level of hygiene involved in this particular poo. So I've compromised and used toilet paper instead. And I have a question for you. I want you to tell me what it is. And we're going to have a nice close look. Now I'm going to give you 2 hints, I think. First of all, have a look at what's inside there, and then have a look at the color. These are 2 different aged pieces of poo, and if I say the correct term for it, I might give it away, so I'm not going to. 2 differently aged pieces of poo, both collected from the same place. The one has started to go white in color, and to give you a rough idea of size, it is probably the size of a very large leopard scat. That is how big they are. And I don't want to give you too much of a hint in terms of what is in there. I'm going to leave you to interpret, say, these little pieces here. I'm going to leave that up for your interpretation as to what they are. Might even, just go for it. Let's just grab a little piece here. Oh. It wants to blow away. No, stay. Okay, I've grabbed a little piece out of it. That's a hint as well. And you can send your answers to my poo quiz. I don't want to give the name away, and I don't want to give the game away. You can send that through on #SafariLive on Twitter, or you can email through your answers to questions@wildearth.tv. And both Viam and myself have decided it might be a very good idea to return to that area at a later stage to see if we can find the particular animal concerned. Now, I don't want to give you any more information, and I do want to, because I think that would make it a little bit too easy. But in the meantime, we're going to get off the rather ugly airstrip and head around and see what we can see. Still no sign of those leopards. Here's my makeshift glove, which is essentially just toilet paper. I'm going to keep this here for later referral, as you do. I can't see our Dacre friend anymore. It's disappeared off very slowly on 3 legs. But Larry, you've suggested that it's going to be leopard food soon, and there is a very, very good chance that it will be. Although they are upwind of it, if they are where we think they are upwind of it, which might give them away. But that Dacre on 3 legs is definitely no match for these 2 leopards. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. Maybe he'll be okay. I would think probably not. Very sad to see, but still part of the cycle of nature that happens out here. As I try and escape this billowing gale that is threatening to take my hat and throw it across the Arathusa airstrip, I believe that James has some thick-skinned pachyderms to show you, so we're going to head across to him and catch up with you a little bit later.
Live. Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy, where we are sitting in the peaceful, gentle company of a little herd of elephants, and it is such a deep pleasure to be here. We followed the tracks of Madiba with Aubrey all the way up to the gate of Vuatela or Gauri or the Sabi Sands. So he's around there. We can't broadcast from there, so we left the area and we've come back to this magnificent little herd of elephants. And it was frenetic, kind of rushing around trying to find the tracks, and that feeling of being here with these peaceful giants is just such a wonderful juxtaposition to the the freneticism of the tracking expedition. So I'm going to enjoy these peaceful giants with you, and I hope you enjoy them too, of course. Now I shall athletically remove myself from the picture. Just wonderful. That's an old cow, I think. Well, not that one. That one's a young tuskless bull. Oh, it's interesting. Completely tuskless. Look at that. No tusks at all. Now that's not completely unusual. It does happen, and I suspect that he was born without tusks. Well, they're all born without tusks, but I mean born without the ability to grow them. And that's not very uncommon. It's not extremely common, but it will make his life a little bit difficult as he gets older, because he does definitely look like a young bull as opposed to a cow. Not so important for cows because they don't use them for any kind of conflict resolution, which the bulls do, of course. And there is some evidence, of course, that tusk size does help with mating opportunities, so he unfortunately won't have that advantage. But quite apart from that, tusks are also very useful when it comes to eating and breaking branches, especially during the winter months. So while not being tremendously hamstrung by the process, you can see he's using his feet there to break off some Pterocarpus rotundifolius or roundleaf teak. While he won't be completely hampered by the lack of tusks, it will make life a little more difficult. There's another little one coming up towards us now, chewing on a stick. Looks like just the 4 of them at this stage. And at the moment they seem to be very relaxed, which is just wonderful. We are having a few communication issues, so even though we are live on Game Drive, and you would normally be able to speak to us on #SafariLive or questions@wildearth.tv, if your question doesn't get answered, it's probably because we're having a few comm difficulties. But at the moment I am in the sultry and dulcet tones of Nicky Austin continue to warble in my ear pleasantly whenever there is a question. And you can see for these elephants it's still a little bit of a difficult time. So although the grass is flushed, there's not a huge amount of it around for them to graze on, and so they're still selecting for quite woody material. And what you'll find is, look at how they use their feet. It's just so amazing to see. They're breaking off a lot of wood, and especially these round leaf teaks. I believe you were looking at some elephant dung with Scott, and some of you said it looked like wheat. I don't believe it looks like wheat at all, and you were wondering whether I would eat some. The answer is no, I will not eat it. I will certainly not eat elephant dung, not even on television. Well, possibly. I don't think I'll eat any. I wouldn't choose to eat any. It certainly smells very delicious when it's the right age. Newly fresh elephant dung isn't particularly delicious to smell, but about a week or two old, and it smells very spicy and very sweet and lovely. And the dung, of course, this time of the year is filled with little pieces of stick, and that's because of what you can see them eating now. Well, it's quite interesting. Brian, did that youngster there also not have tusks? Do you remember?
The little one.
The littlest,
Yeah.
also not have tusks. So there are two tuskless elephants in this little herd. So they're probably born to the same mother, who's probably that tusked individual, the big one that we saw earlier.
Coming into your position.
There they go there. I'm sure that's the mother there, or probably of both of them. This one looks to me to be about 10, and the other one, well, about 6 or 7. It's quite interesting. So she's obviously carrying some kind of recessive gene that means that the tusks don't grow in her offspring. That's really interesting. Now, while you're looking at that tree that is being macerated and destroyed by this young elephant, what I would like you to try and notice is that all of the branches around which that little bull is standing are part of the same plant. All of those those sticks coming up probably in a circumference or a diameter of about, say, 2 meters, come from the same rootstock. And that's just because the plant has been broken again and again and again and again over the years. Keeps sending up new sticks, and the rootstock just gets thicker and thicker, and that's a very common response to defoliation and being broken up and bashed about a bit. Let's move a little bit forward and see if we can't get a better view. I've just spiked myself with my pointing device, aka handheld radio. Thank you, Laura in Pennsylvania, for your comment. You say that it looks like I enjoy my handheld pointing device and that I'll miss it when it's gone. I think you're probably right, you know. It's a very good device. Now, Brian, watch out for the tree there. This young elephant is not very happy with us. It's not entirely uncommon for a tuskless bull to be slightly more wary than the others. I don't think that his lack of tusk will have affected him too much at this stage of the game, but it will as he gets older. and sometimes they turn into quite nasty adults because they've had a rough time and they've been bullied as youngsters, just like with people. So let's hope that this young fellow doesn't get too much in the way of bullying as he grows up. He's very consciously smelling us all the time, and the wind is blowing straight towards him, so he's getting a whiff of human all the time. Look at that amazing way they feed. Isn't that incredible? See how he lifts his trunk continuously to try and smell us? And that's because he's picking up the scent of human being mixed with diesel and possibly soap as well. And whatever deodorant you're wearing, Brian. What are you wearing?
Very splendid deodorant.
Very splendid deodorant. There we go.
I went blank on the name there.
Brian wears a deodorant called Very Splendid Deodorant, and that's what that elephant is enjoying the smell of. And you may also just be able to hear the wind rustling through the leaves, the trees and the dry branches. Now, if we pan across to the rest of the herd, you'll see that they have found a little grove of combretum trees that are flushing, and they're eating those new leaves. Look at that. Right, now we're going to drive a little bit closer to these elephants, and Ruth in Costa Rica, while we do that, you say you watch a lot of cameras around the place. I think there are over 50 WildEarth cameras around the world, which is quite a lot, and some of them are spread around here and some of them are nowhere near here, and you'd like a bit of a lay of the land, Ruth. I believe that you've asked about Tembe. Tembe Elephant Park is in the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, so quite a long way south of where we are now, at least sort of 300 or 400 kilometers, so a long way from here. Idube, I think there's one there, which is also in the Sabi Sands, is not far from here, and I'll just get a couple of names of the other ones and I'll tell you where they are too. I can try and draw you a map, but oh dear, as some of you will know, my drawing skills are not impressive. And we're also right now near, you can see that pole perhaps as we go past it. Can you see it, Mark? Here it is. That pole is the Gowrie repeater from which the signal that you receive often goes from the vehicle to one of those repeaters. We have 3 of them around the place, and it goes towards that repeater and then out into the ether, where somehow you manage to receive it about 2 seconds after I've said what I've said, which I find absolutely astonishing and well beyond the fathoming of my small brain. This young elephant still standing in the road. He's not very happy, this young bull. I think he's also probably just about to hit puberty, and so his testosterone levels are perhaps picking up a little. And he's having a very long smell at us. The rest of them don't seem to be in the slightest bit fazed by us at all. Beautiful, look at that. He's not even, doesn't even want to eat. He's just so fascinated by what he's smelling. Here comes the big cow. Quite an old lady, I would say. I may be wrong, but I'd put her in the region of about 45 years, and you can see some of her bones sticking out a bit after a tough dry season. But she doesn't seem to be lactating. That calf behind her is too old to be suckling exclusively, so she'll be okay. with the nutritional deficits that the dry season has enforced upon her. I'm going to sneak a little bit forward. It is very thick where they're going. We'll just sneak slowly down here. And watch them supping on the new combretum leaves. I find this very interesting that she's produced 2 tuskless calves. That's really fascinating. Immediately that young bull feels better because he's near his mother and he's not nearly as threatened as he was beforehand. I also think the fact that my voice is being masked by the sound of the engine is perhaps affecting him a bit less than having me blethering away at high volume with the engine off. Look at them loving the new combretum leaves. I'll have to be a little bit careful. They are full of tannins, those new leaves, and so they won't only eat those brand new combretum leaves. I suspect they probably look a bit nicer than they taste. And I can see that 1 or 2 of them picking the leaves, and then sort of sampling them and then dropping them. And again, you can see what a brilliant color it is to be grey out here. I think far more than to be brown.
Yeah, and the driver that you move the car here, which direction I was heading?
There's a little one behind us, Brian. Trying to decide whether to go behind or in front. Come on, fella, we're okay. So they're completely relaxed with us, which is just wonderful. Should we go back a bit, Brian? Seems to be breaking up the termite mound a bit. I don't want to move everybody. There is a young bull coming behind us, but I think we'll disturb him. We have kind of split them apart a bit, and I don't want to make it uncomfortable for him. But Brian will pick him up now, coming past that beautiful blue rope. There he is.
Okay, thanks, copy that.
So I'm not mistaken, there are 3 young bulls here, one of them with tusks, the other 2 without. I would struggle to believe that she's the mother of all 4 of them, I must say, of all 3 of them. Because this one looks to be the same age as the youngster, if not maybe in between their ages, no, but in between. He's probably about 8 or 9. So I don't think all from the same mum. Which begs the question as to where the others are. Now these breeding herds will split up. There's no reason for them to stay together all the time. You'll probably find that they're in communication with each other through their infrasonic calls, which we can't hear. They're too low frequency, and possibly even tectonically, and that means through bashing on the floor. They reckon that elephants can hear each other. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest to find that there was something in the way of extrasensory, what we would term extrasensory communication between them either.
Any other vehicle wanting to come in, I'm willing to jump up shortly. Thank you. Yeah, John? Go on over. Beverage of boundary west of the forest.
A very nice question from Gert in the Netherlands about the size of tusks, and I suspect sparked by the fact that there are two tuskless animals here. Now, Gert, you have very correctly surmised that there are not a great deal of big tuskers left in the world. That is because, as you have again correctly surmised, they have been shot out by greedy people with guns, and unfortunately that has meant that the big tuskers of southern Africa no longer are found. There are one or two around left in the Kruger, but many of the big bulls with their big magnificent tusks are no longer, and their genes have been shot out of the population distressingly. But like you say, there are a few big ones up left in Tsavo and Tembe Elephant Park, which we spoke about in north of KwaZulu-Natal. A couple of big ones there, and well, with any luck those genes will be bred back into the population. But yes, Gert, you're absolutely right. The big ones are definitely gone from this area, and indeed when the Kruger Park was proclaimed in 1926, there were only 8 or 10 elephants left in the entire area. That situation's changed, and they're probably now upward of 18,000 in the Kruger. It's a rather thick area, so I don't think I'm going to bash through here after them for too long. But Gert, the other thing is that the tusklessness I don't think has anything to do with the same reasons as that. There are lots of big bulls with very small tusks, and this tusklessness is definitely a genetic thing, but I don't think it's born of hunting. I think it's born of, well, it may have been, its prevalence in the population may have been increased by the hunting of tusked bulls, but certainly I think it always did occur naturally, just maybe not in the same profusion that it does now. Very nice question, thank you, Gert. Love those questions that spark a bit of debate and question. So that's the mother, and you can see that she's got quite decent sized tusks for a cow. And that little fellow is now seeking comfort. He's just going to check with his mum that everything's okay. He's stealing some of her food out of her mouth. He's probably just a little bit nervous having us driving around the place. Isn't he sweet? He's being a brat. He's just being a total brat. And as we look at these two tuskless animals, Susan, you want to know, will they be tolerated in the herd? On Twitter. Susan, of course they will. There's no reason for the females to dislike them anymore, except when it comes to mating. They may not select for them, and they may struggle therefore for mating opportunities, but they certainly wouldn't be excluded from a herd any more than a tusked bull would. So I don't think that there would be any problem with that. That youngster is just being a brat. All he's doing, he's trying to learn from his mother. He's picking what she's eating. He wants some of what she's eating, and I'm sure those of you who've had children know exactly what is going on here. Just getting very cross that mummy won't share her food. Look at that beautiful new, almost translucent green color shining in this late afternoon sun, juxtaposed with the grey of the elephant. I think it's just marvelous. And how quickly these elephants just disappear into this vegetation. It always astounds me. So I suspect she is probably part of a larger herd, if you like, or population, or like this, is not entirely usual for this area. I'd say 10 to 15 is the most normal size for a herd of elephants in this particular area. Not quite what they are here. Right, while we watch these elephants and see what they're going to do, I'm very glad to tell you that the bush walk kit seems to be fully functional today, which is
Welcome back, everyone, and what a beautiful scene it is, the setting sun with those clouds in the distance. We haven't had any luck finding Karula, but thankfully Steph has been very helpful in finding interesting things along the way and spotted a lioness track just on the road below us here. And it's a great opportunity for us to get down, and even though the track is here within the circle, it's very difficult to see in the overcast conditions. So I'm going to use my torch or flashlights to act like the rising or setting sun, and this goes to show how when the sun is above us, like I'm shining it directly above the track now, it's difficult to see, whereas at sunrise, the sun is at a low angle. It's much easier to see the depressions from the shadows cast. Left paw of the lioness, you can see how my left hand fingers fit in very easily, whereas if I use my right hand, it doesn't kind of work. So it's very easy. You just simply put your hand above the track, and this we can tell is a left paw. It looks to me like it could be a back paw, which is always smaller than the front paw of almost all four-legged animals. The bulk of their weight is carried on their front legs, head, shoulders, all the organs. So you'll typically find the front foot being the biggest. And I'm guessing that this is a track of one of the Nkuhuma lioness, who, judging by the tracks Brent found this morning, have reunited. It looked like the remaining 6 members of that pride have finally reunited after a week apart, but sadly they crossed north into Buffelshoek. So these tracks would have been from last night. But what I love being on, why I love being on foot is the fact that you can imagine being there exactly where this lion was, just at a slightly different time. Now, we found some other interesting artifacts along the way. I'm going to make this quick because I know James did a great job in finding that breeding herd of elephants for you. And we can thank Jean-Dre for finding this porcupine quill.
Crash cut, you live? Hello everybody, sorry about that, as I obviously I preempted the failure, catastrophic thereof, of the walking kit. They went black screen. I don't know if it's exploded or what's happened, but they're no longer live. We are live. The elephant is just behind us. I'm a little bit loath to move, actually. She's came quite close while you were away. What we're going to do is an attempt a maneuver that doesn't disturb her, so it's going to be painfully slow and probably with lots of wheel turnings. The big cow is just behind us. Ryan, will you keep an eye on her? Seems to be okay. This is Scott Dyson. It's called reverse by touch. Oh, look at that beautiful shot. Oh, with the sun behind him. Magnificent. That's pretty inspirational, I say. Wowee. So a little bit of difficulty with that new question coming through. I think I've got it correctly though. Marry or Marin in the Western Cape. A very nice question from you. When an elephant dies of natural causes, what does the Kruger Park do? Do they come and bury it or take the tusks, or what do they do? Marin, what they do is they will normally come and take the tusks if the animal does die of natural causes and it has decent sized tusks. If it dies of natural causes and no one finds it, then the tusks often just disappear. And often elephants die close to riverbeds where they're trying to eat soft material, because they die normally from their teeth eventually wearing down, and that makes them seek out the softest vegetation possible, and that's normally closest to the rivers. So I suspect were you to trawl the rivers, you'd probably find quite a few tusks lying around there. But if it's in an obvious place, certainly the Sabi Sands or the Kruger would come and take those tusks away so as to discourage any kind of incursion from trespassers, poachers and sellers of illegal ivory, of which there are unfortunately a disturbing number in the world. Very nice question. But otherwise, you know, leading on from that, of course, is the inevitable discussion of the elephant graveyard and where they are and if they are. Again, one of the great biological misconceptions created by that, what was a wonderful film with beautiful music and very little in the way of biology, and that is The Lion King. And there is no such thing as an elephant graveyard. Again, because elephants go down to the rivers and spend a lot of time down there in their last years, often their bones sink into the sand there, into the water. And also, of course, you know, you don't see a lot of bones around because the hyenas will take them away, and the carcasses get spread apart over the years by the scavengers that come and eat on the bones, and then they just weather away eventually into the ground. Not a lot of fossilization going on in the exposed areas on top of the ground here. Not sure quite why she's showing us her bottom at this stage. But even an elephant's bottom with a sun like that behind it is quite magnificent. That little one is definitely seeking comfort from its mother. The other two are off behind us, very comfortably eating away towards the east. And the little one there, you can see, has picked a very long piece of round leaf teak and bitten off all of the bark. It's a really trying time for an elephant because they have to eat so much. Not sure if there's still communications with the final control at this stage. Oh, look at that. Right, Heidi, I think I've got your question correctly. Well, certainly the second part. I'm going to deal with that first. You say the other night on the Arathusa Dam cam, you were watching a herd of elephants coming down to drink perhaps, and you saw that they were with some hippos, and you wondered how they interact. Elephants, there's no blanket statement here. Elephants are deeply respected by just about everything else out here, and that's simply by virtue of the fact that they're the biggest. So if you get in their way and they don't like you, well, you can get yourself into quite a lot of trouble. Hippopotamus are very nervous if they are separated from their water, but I don't think that they worry about elephants separating them from their water. So unless there was a young bull a bull elephant, I mean, that was sort of coming into his first must and hadn't been disciplined sufficiently by the old bulls or by the matriarch, then I suppose the hippo might have trouble. Same with the rhino. Elephants have been known to kill rhino every so often, normally young bulls testing themselves, and rhino sort of not taking any nonsense and then being killed by big elephant bulls. So that does sometimes happen. Then the first part of your question, I think, is related to the second, and it is, why do we see elephants alone so much of the time? Heidi, they don't tolerate too much in the way of other animals. I think they also eat in a different fashion, so we don't see a lot of kudu and that sort of thing around elephants, because, I wonder, that's actually a very good question. I haven't thought of it before. But so the method that they feed is that they eat a lot of bark and stuff that perhaps the kudu don't. The kudu would be selecting for much more herbaceous material. So I think there's, in winter when the elephant's predominantly browsing, we don't see other browsing antelope around them, possibly because they're eating a different suite of species. So nothing else that I know of other than elephants eats these roundleaf teaks the way they are now, and very little also eats the combretums, and especially the combretum rootstock. The elephants are the only ones that are able to get at the combretum rootstock. So I think that's why in winter you wouldn't. Then in summer, in the long grass, when the elephants are trying to graze, do we see other animals with them? I suppose we don't see other animals hugely around them, and perhaps there is a level of intolerance that elephants display towards other herbivores. I know certainly around water. If water is scarce, they are not tolerant of other animals trying to drink when they are trying to drink. And that especially goes for the bulls, who do not tolerate buffalo, and they don't tolerate baboons. I've seen them chasing baboons off. That's normally the young bulls though. So it's not a blanket statement. We can't say that they're inherently massively intolerant to other species, but they do tend to be, I think other animals are just very wary of them, simply by virtue of their vast size. So I hope that answers your question, Heidi. Another very good one, I must say. So this is obviously a pretty good area for them to be feeding, because they're just walking round and round and round the same sort of spot, eating on these pterocarpus trees. Oh dear, there goes it looks like a gardenia. No, it's not. I'll go and have a look at what it is. Let's just reverse out of here. We can't get a bit closer. So Sonia and Dorse, while I move the car slightly in order to get a better view of that elephant, you want to know about the hippo that Brian and I found mired in the mud yesterday, which I thought might be stuck. No, I think I'm going to wait here actually. She looks like she's coming closer herself. The hippo is out. It wasn't there this morning. We went to have a look, and there was nothing but stony silence lurking around where the hippo was yesterday, and so it got out absolutely scot-free and not harmed. Now that little tin shack you can see behind the elephant is where Eugene lives. That's where we put him. But he sort of works from there, eats from there. He has a small kitchenette inside, and of course all the power cables and things for the mast that is broadcasting to us as we speak. We let him out once a week for an hour when he is allowed to go into town to buy some supplies, and then he's back into his little tin shack there. I am of course joking. Eugene does not live in that shack. There's a lot of very sophisticated equipment that Eugene messes around with in there, but he doesn't live in it. Here comes this beautiful elephant. We watch this beautiful big cow walking gently towards us. I'm going to lower my voice slightly in the hopes that she might come even closer. We got a question about how old she could be from, I think it's from San Francisco. Radio's a little bit off. Yes, Grace in Frisco, Texas, I think. You want to know how long she will live? Well, she'd probably live up to about 60 years, 55 to 60 years in the Kruger Park. Here, they do have to eat quite a lot more wood than they would in other areas, like Botswana in the Okavango Delta, for example, and so their teeth don't last quite as long as they might in areas where the food is a bit softer. So in areas like the Okavango, where elephants are resident, they might live 5 or 6 years longer, maybe pushing to 60 or 65 years. Thank you, Grace. Just quietly, really enjoying, absorbing this magnificent sight. You'll see if she doesn't come a little bit closer to us. She seems to be completely relaxed around us, which is just such a treat. She's watching us, make no mistake, and every time the wind blows slightly towards her, she picks up the scent of us humans, and she just gives us a wary little look. Now, a second Grace from Texas. Interesting question. Must be lots of Graces in Texas if 2 of them are watching this show. Grace, you want to know if the situation presented itself, would a bull elephant mate with his mother? I don't know, Grace. I imagine it's probably possible. I think it's highly unlikely, though. I think that the elephants show a very much tighter family bond that sort of doesn't, unlike the lions, you know, which of course are where incest is commonplace and really not harmful at all to the gene pool. If it happens for 1 or 2 generations, I don't think the same can be said for elephants, and I think you'll find that they'll avoid that quite studiously. This is a beautiful cow. And a very excellent question from a very astute little girl in Ohio called Gracie. Gracie is aged just 8, so the 3rd Grace of the afternoon. Gracie, you want to know why it is that a tuskless elephant would be bullied by some of the others. It's not very nice. Gracie, it isn't very nice at all. Look at the way that that cow is stripping that piece of strychnos. No, it's not. It's zebra wood. Chewing the bark off that zebra wood. Gracie, you want to know why they're bullied? Gracie, it's simply because in the animal world, normally the bigger you are and the stronger you are, the more chance you have of being safe. So unlike with human beings, where we will talk with each other sometimes if we don't agree, in the animal world, the bigger you are, no matter how bad your argument, the bigger you are, the more often you tend to win the argument. And so an elephant without tusks is going to struggle to fight an elephant that does have tusks, and so that's why they would be bullied by some of the others. So I'm afraid it isn't very nice, but I think it does happen quite a lot. Look at that beautiful foot. The nice thing, Gracie, about elephants, of course, is that they live in herds. So that bull will be protected by the herd that he lives in. As long as he doesn't cause trouble, he'll be allowed to stay in his herd. That is a magnificent picture. Gee whiz. Hold on, Brian, that's incredible. That thing that she's eating is called Dalbergia melanoxylon, or the zebra wood. And those thorns that she's pushing through her mouth would go straight through the tires of this Land Rover. And that's not because the tires are worn or old, it's because the strength of that wood is quite astonishing, and how she's managing to avoid being spiked on the palate and the trunk and then the tongue, I just don't know. That is amazing. Now, she's picking off branches that are probably about, say, an inch in diameter. Bugsy, you wanted to know how thick they are. That one that she's holding there is probably about half an inch in diameter. Look at those thorns. Look at those massive thorns that are about to come out the other side of her mouth. And she'll eat much thicker ones, twice as thick as that, up to about an inch in diameter. And sometimes even bigger. Certainly the Cambritum ones, they'll eat, some of them are thick to about 2 or 3 inches at the base. But thicker than that, not so much. Didn't like that piece. Take the other piece that she's already been sucking on. Picking off see how she's tearing the bark off and then pushing it into her mouth. It really is a full-time job eating as an African elephant. Wonderful. And they are so selective about what they eat, you know. Look at her selecting individual branches. She wants the thick one now, so she's separated that from the others, twisted her trunk around it. If it doesn't come out easily enough, she'll break it with her foot. Here we go, here comes the foot. That is just so great. She's eating now. Now she is eating strychnos, you know, that's not zebra wood anymore. She's eating a strychnos, or black monkey orange, and those are most of the trees, sorry, Brian. Those are most of the trees that you can see around us here. We're in something of a strychnos thicket, and she's mercifully helping to clear it a bit. Now, interestingly, strychnos, is that strychnos or is it more zebra wood? Can't see very clearly. No, that's more zebra wood. She's eating more zebra wood. She's not eating the strychnos. I think I may be talking nonsense. I'm going to get my powerful binoculars out and have a quick look. It's definitely strychnos. Now I've created clearly a little bit of consternation here with Angela in Boston. I've confused you by saying, why would I lower my voice if I didn't want to interact with them? I said earlier I'd lower my voice so that she came closer to us. What I meant there, Angela, is that the human voice can be a deterrent. It can scare an elephant. It can make them wary of us. So if I lower my voice, what it does is put her completely at ease and allow her to almost ignore us. So by so doing, if you can get into a situation where the elephant is almost treating you as part of the furniture, then they do come very close by without any kind of interaction. And what that does is it just fills you with the most tremendous sense and awe of their amazing power, and they really are just spectacular animals. So by lowering my voice, I'm not trying to bait her into coming towards us at all. I'm just trying to make sure that she sees us as part of the furniture. So I'm not in any way trying to have some kind of anthropogenic interaction with her or communication experience with her at all. That's all I meant by that, Angela. Very good question. You can see immediately how it would have sounded like I was trying to bait her towards us. But it's quite the opposite. So I really love it. I really love it when elephants come close to us of their own volition, and I really dislike driving towards them. So nice when we get close to them when they've come towards us. I'm just going to point over to that side. Brian is frantically pointing at what is yet another spectacular Djuma Kruger Park low-felt South African, which of course is the best country in the world, sunset. Beautiful. Golden, honey, lemon, and a little bit of orange thrown in there. Isn't that beautiful? And I think it's Patty, who's probably on a plane towards us as we speak, and she'll be enjoying one of those African sunsets come tomorrow evening. Stunning. Well done, Brian. Good job, good job. This cow is still in front of us, feeding away. Oh, that's wonderful. Never get sick of them. There's Eugene's house. So, before we disappear and leave these elephants, Penny Pine, you would like to know if Eugene ever invites me over for dinner in his house. He does, but you know, I'm a bit of a snob, so I don't go and spend too much time in his tin shack with him. I do invite him over to our place every so often, and we feed him once a month or so. Otherwise, he lives just there on his own in that, with the elephants in his tin shack. Right, I have some very good news which I'm not going to give to you. I'm going to let the bearer of the news give it to you herself. The diminutive, stoic, and highly, what should we say? Yeah, what is the word that I'm groping for? Diminutive, stoic, and I've lost the word completely. What it means, the word I'm looking for means that she doesn't give up. We're going to hand you over to Jamie, who has had some marvelous success, and I will see you a little bit later. Oh, that's just magnificent. Look at that sun.
Well, welcome back. And yes, indeed, it took us quite a long time in the concerted efforts of the three of us circling round and round, and then stopping to listen for the sounds of them growling at each other. But we have indeed located Tingana and Kwatile. And at the moment you can see why it took us so long to find them. Only got a nice view of Kwatile at the moment. She's just settled down. In terms of maneuverability, this is not the easiest block to drive around in. VM and I have been dodging branches left, right and centre. But there we have it. She really is probably one of the most beautiful leopards I've seen around here. There's something absolutely perfect about her. And we will be staying with them for the rest of the duration of the sunset safari, because I'm sure that at some point very soon, now that it's a little bit cooler, there's a very good chance they're going to get up and mobile. She still seems to be flirting with him every now and again, but so far there's been no mating action. And I've just been listening to Doug chatting on the other vehicle. Now we have a bit of an answer to the mystery as to why Kwatile has been mating. And apparently she did have cubs, so we can confirm those suckle marks were there. But it seems as though she may have lost them. And that could be anything from other male leopards to hyena to other lions in the area. And it could be that her hormones, if she has lost her cubs, have immediately come back into play, but that doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to get pregnant immediately from this mating. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, but it seems to be more likely that she has lost her cubs. She's just a blur of spots in a drainage line. Now Tingana, you can't see him at the moment. Actually, neither can I from where I did. Oh, I can still see him, but it's a very, very awkward angle. Unfortunately, I can't get you there. From that dead stump there, that is essentially where he is. He's just behind and to the left of that on the termite mound. And I'm sure they will get up and about. But very, very cool that we managed to find them in the end. And I was absolutely determined that we were not going to leave without seeing them again after that lucky break where we bumped into them this morning. And there's a very good possibility that if we hadn't seen them this morning, we would never have known where to start this afternoon. And that's what gave us that little extra advantage we needed. Now the guides tell me that Kwatile, apart from her 2-2 spot pattern on either side of her nose, that she has a notch in one of her ears and a very, very pink nose. I did notice the pink nose earlier, but I'm still looking to see which ear that notch is in. And in the end, the way that we found them was actually by sitting quietly and listening to the sounds of them, or at least her, growling and making those coy noises that I mentioned a little bit earlier that she was displaying this morning. And if you are joining us for the first time, how cool is this? The leopard that you're seeing, we are sitting with right here on Arathusa Game Reserve in the Sabi Sands. And we just don't know what's going to happen next. I'm sure at some point she's going to get up and start flirting with him once again. But we just have to wait and see. And if at the very least we'll be able to hear it. Now, I mentioned that it is a live safari, and Raj, you were wondering how many different sites we use, or how many different sites stream through this. Now, I know that the Nat Geo Wild website broadcasts from there on www.wildsafariLive.com, and there's also the WildEarth website. I know that it is streamed on YouTube, but I also know that many of the viewers will have their different approaches and their different preferences. And maybe if you could send those through to Raj and let us know, or send them through to me and I will pass that message on, as to how many different sites we do get to broadcast on. But how cool is this, just to be sitting with these leopards, not knowing exactly what it is they're going to do. We're sort of maybe 200 meters from where that injured Dacre was, although I think it's unlikely that they're going to go hunting now. I think what she's going to do is, it does take about maybe half a day to a day for the female to really get that male to get ready to mate. She's got to keep on giving him the message until he finally receives it and starts to mate with her, and then they'll mate continuously for the next few days. But the difficulty is, of course, is finding them. So we got lucky this morning, and then that gave us a head start for this afternoon, and that's why I really just want to sit with them and see what they get up to. It's the first time I've ever seen this kind of courting behavior. I've seen leopards mating before, but this is the first time that I've ever seen the female constantly initiating the contact with the male, and with the male basically ignoring her, getting up, moving away. So it's been an important lesson for me as well, as to how the sort of mating process with the leopards starts out. And she seems to have exhausted herself from her efforts, and having seen her this morning, I'm not surprised. She did a lot of bouncing and springing and waving of her tail around and around, so I think she must be feeling fairly tired. Tingana's taking it all in his stride. It's obviously not the first time he's been through this whole process, and he's collapsed quite happily on top of a termite mound under a guarri bush, and seems content to stay there for the moment. Let's keep an eye on her and just see what she's up to. Now, even if she gets up and moves off to the left and we struggle to get a visual, just make sure you listen really closely to the sounds that she makes. It's the most amazing sound. It sounds aggressive, but it also has got a very low, husky tone to the growl. You can hear the francolins off in the distance, just settling down for the night. I'm just checking behind her ear there. Grab my binoculars. She seems to have an old, that looks to me like an old injury that's healed up. Yeah, I think that is an old puncture wound around there. And that could be, it could be an old mating injury. You'll
never find it. Call him in from that side.
The male does grip her behind the back of the neck when he mates with her, just to hold her and stop her from swatting him too hard.
Everybody watch out for the branches as we crash our way out.
Here we go. Perfect. We could actually see that perfectly on the left ear. Just as I was hearing an update from Karen to say that Kwatile's notch is in her left ear, she turned her head beautifully and we got it just on the top there of the left ear. Tiny little V notch, which is a perfect identifying feature because it's not something that's going to heal anytime soon. And just while I'm chatting a bit about Karen's update, She also tells me that that our live safaris are broadcast on 4 sites. So the Nat Geo website, the WildEarth website, on YouTube, and then on Ustream as well. So thank you for that. And Raj, if you were listening, that is where you can find our live safaris. There you go, you can just see the notch on the top of the left ear. But she's definitely not a leopard that I will ever mistake ever again. It was the first time I saw her this morning. She's got a very distinctive gold colour. Now while Kwatile is sleeping off some of her exertions from earlier, and possibly when we have a chance to maybe reposition ourselves, Scott is waiting to say goodbye from his bushwalking afternoon. So we're going to head across to him and then catch up with you a little bit later, but never fear, we will be back with these leopards as soon as possible. Cheers for now.
Well, what a wonderful way to finish off the afternoon bushwalk here at Djuma, an African sunset that we've managed to share with you live, and some special moments in between. Thankfully for all of you though, it's not over just yet, and you guys are going to be going back to Jamie and Kwatile. Well done for all of her hard work to get you back into that sighting. When I was on camera with her this morning, they moved into some incredibly thick bush, which I'm told they're still hiding away in, but be patient and there's still time. Hopefully they're going to come out and you're going to get to see some awesome shots of them. It's not often we get to see a pair of leopards. Now, just one thing I would like to show you, which I didn't get to show you earlier. We're getting much better with the technology on these bushwalks, but there's still a few glitches, and interestingly, Jandre bent over and the antenna dipped down too far, so that's why you lost our signal when I was showing you this porcupine quill earlier. And the porcupine quill is a wonderful thing to see because we don't often get to show you the porcupines, which isn't much good. Like the aardvark that we chatted about earlier, where we saw it had burrowed and excavated for termites, the porcupine is also nocturnal, just like that animal, the aardvark, and that's why we don't get to see them very often. I've only seen one in the Sabi Sands and approaching 4.5 years of being here, but their tracks are always around. Now, this tiny little section at the end is what would be embedded in the skin of the porcupine, and the rest will stick out. And what porcupines will do when they're moving about, I'll simulate. I've only got one quill, sadly. They've got hundreds, but they'll walk with the quills flattened against their back, and if there's any potential threats, they will lift the quills up and keep their back and bottom with hundreds of quills aiming at the potential threat. Their front end is the soft end, so if animals like leopard and honey badgers do attack, when lion do attack a porcupine, they're probably going to get a few stray quills, but if they get to the head, I think I just heard an impala alarm call. But it was just one. So maybe in this windy weather, the impala got a little bit of a fright, let off an alarm call, and then realized it was nothing to worry about, but I'll still keep listening. And yeah, back to the porcupine, one of Africa's, well, it is Africa's largest rodent, and this essentially is its hair. Hayden, who some of you may know, another presenter who will be coming back soon to join us for a short stint, which is really exciting news. He had a lucky porcupine quill a while back. Sadly, this one is broken, so we are not going to keep this one for Hayden to add to his arsenal of lucky quills. But good news that some of you will get to see Hayden as well as Peter rejoining us for a short period in the future. Well, I'm not going to keep you here too long. I'm going to give you one last view of the vanishing colors at the sunset, and then we're going to send you back to Jamie. So let's take one last look, and while we're looking at the sun, I can answer a question from Rudy in California. And Rudy's interested to know, where is it that the aardvark live during the daytime? It's a good question, Rudy. Much like the excavations it makes to get its food, it also excavates burrows. And Jamie will be able to tell you a story about aardvark burrows. I'm told she fell into one whilst driving, or the vehicle fell into one. And there's quite a few of them actually around Balanites Road on the western portions of Djuma. So we know where they're hiding and sleeping during the day, but they only come out late at night. And good to have you on the bush walk this evening, Rudy. Really wonderful stuff. And we're going to answer one or two more questions while we wait for these leopards to come out. So good to have you, and isn't it incredible that you can join us live on these walking safaris? It's really, really awesome stuff, and can't wait to do more with you. There's so many interesting small things that we can see and do that you cannot do on the vehicle. So it's really exciting, and let's hope the tech issues and Eugene, our tech wizard, keeps cracking the codes to all these little problems. Now, another question's just come through from a good friend of mine, Matty, age 9. He's a strong follower of our safaris, and always good to hear you watching, Matty. Matty's interested to know what would happen if we came across wild dogs on foot. Well, there would be a massive smile on my face, Matty, because we haven't seen wild dogs, but hopefully they're going to be coming back soon. And there were actually reports that there were some not too far away from us this morning, Matty, up in Buffels Hook, and they've been moving around with their young pups, and hopefully they'll continue to move further south. If and when they do come further south and we do approach them and bump into them on foot, usually they run off a short distance. They're quite nervous of people on foot, as are the lions and the leopards and the elephants. Most of the time, if you're walking through the bush and you come across any wild animal, it will choose to run away from us because they don't want to have a fight unnecessarily, and they don't want to risk getting any injuries. Even though we're very small, they know that we can be dangerous, so they would rather avoid us, and the wild dogs are no different. In my experience, they will get up, run a few meters, and as long as you back up slowly and give them their space, you can get back to the vehicle and then bring your guests back in on the vehicle, and the dogs will just be at ease, relaxed. So it's not an animal that we have to be worried about attacking us. The wild dog, as well as the cheetah, Matty, it's very unlikely that a wild cheetah or a wild dog would ever attack us. Leopard and lion are different. That can happen from time to time, but cheetah and wild dog are two of the predators that we really don't need to worry about, and it's only really in captive scenarios where they may be breeding these animals where people might get the odd nip from them. Good to know that you're watching, Maddie, and we are going to send you back to Jamie now. Let's hope the leopards don't take too long to come out of their hiding places, and I think it's worth staying tuned in case they do. Thanks so much for all your contributions, and it's been wonderful having you guys on a live walking safari. So look forward to some more in the coming days. Steph might be taking a few, and I'm sure a lot of you would be looking forward to see Steph in front of the camera again, so that's also something to look forward to. Well done to Nikki and Jess, who's fresh out from Joburg in the final control. Thanks for your help there. Back to Jamie. We'll see you next time.
Was to continue, and you know, overall that's the biggest problem with all of these big cats, particularly lions.
Welcome back.
They are technically all
And
inbreeding
not much has changed on this side.
at this point in time. That
It's
they only
very, very
found 5
quiet
days
and
in the
still.
winter, and even those places are
And
tiny.
Kwatile
those
and
lions are
Tingana
breeding with those lions
are soon to be
generation
mating
after
leopards, even
generation
though they
after
haven't quite
generation
got
after
there
generation.
yet.
So there's been some clever
Are
people
fast
who have tried
asleep.
to suggest, you know, like genetic biodiversity swapping and things like that to try and mix up the gene pool, but then, you know,
And I'm very glad that we got to them when we did, because it's amazing how fast it gets dark out here.
Specifically evolved for
And it
this
would have been
exact
very,
environment.
very
So to
tricky
take them and put them somewhere else, you're playing God, and
to
not even
find
in a
them,
good way.
even just maybe 10 or 15 minutes after we did. So we got really lucky.
Nature would naturally do it through a
Something made her
natural,
look up.
quite steady and slow distribution. So not a good idea, but at this stage, especially with things like lions, there's just not that much choice. I mean, some of the populations
See her
are
head
so small
drooping
at this
down
stage
again.
that inbreeding within them is a very, very serious cause for concern.
Although they look very, very relaxed, just looking at the time, I think there's a good chance that she's going to get up fairly soon and go and initiate some contact with Tingana on the top of the termite mound. And once she does get up and move, then we will be able to pull forward a little bit, hopefully, and be able to get a visual of both of them. At the moment, I don't want to move any further into the gap just because that will disturb her. This has been quite an interesting lesson, as I mentioned before, in leopard behavior. We've considered all possibility, but I think the most likely of those is that I think that the most likely explanation is that she has lost her cubs, which is very, very unfortunate, but it is just the way of things. I'm just sorry, I just got distracted a little bit by the game drive channel. There's other vehicles trying to make their way in, but our position here is secure. They just had to try and find their way to us, and as I said, it is a very, very thick block that we are in. I'm just looking to see if there's any space for us to move around to make life a little bit easier for the other vehicle, but I don't think there is, unfortunately. Oh, she's looking up again. She's having a look towards us. And she's given us a perfect view of that old injury behind her left ear. So Sandy, yes, she does. I think it is old. It doesn't look to me to be terribly fresh. She also has, which is something we haven't seen this afternoon, but I did see this morning, she's got a cut behind her right shoulder blade on her side. That the cut behind her shoulder blade looks a little bit fresher than this hole that looks healed over. Just trying to have a look with binoculars to see if I can see further in there. But yes, Sandy, she does have a wound behind her left ear. I've speculated that it could have been an injury from mating, maybe a couple of weeks ago, because it does look like it's healed up. But typically the male leopards will grasp the female behind the neck when they mate, and that's because they have barbed penises. So the mating tends to be a little bit painful for the female, and she often responds quite aggressively. So he holds her down just to stop her from swatting him or interrupting the mating before it's finished. It's actually a beautiful evening. It's gone really, really still after all of that wind that we had earlier. Although I don't know if that's because we're just really tucked away in this drainage line. No, there's a bit of a breeze still, but there's lots and lots of birds out. I can hear fiery neck nightjars, I can hear fork-tailed drongos, cisticulars, franklins. They're all out in force this evening. Now typically an leopard mating session, when they are in sort of the full swing of her estrus, what they will do is every 20 minutes or so, just like with lions, the female will go and initiate the mating. She'll go up to him, she'll rub her head on his, she'll rub her tail over his face, and then she'll present herself to be mated with. And that will happen once every 20 minutes for somewhere between 3 to 5 days. It's slightly shorter with leopards than it is for lions. But that is what will continue to happen if she stays with him and if they continue to mate. Now it will be interesting to see. Now I've said that she's lost her cubs and probably in all likelihood won't get pregnant for, this might not be a full estrus for her to have come into a full estrus so soon after losing something like that. But it will be interesting to see if she adopts the technique that other females adopt around here, which is to mate with as many males in the area as possible. I'd be curious to see. I think in this particular circumstance it's just her hormones are immediately coming up after the cubs have gone and she stopped lactating. Curious to see what happens though. It'll be an interesting lesson. And I'm going to go and do some further reading up onto what happens with leopards when they do lose their cubs and how quickly they can come into estrus. Because I know that James saw her basically a week ago, I think it was, or maybe just more than a week ago, and she had fresh suckle marks, which we now know to be the case. We weren't too sure, but we now know it was true. I'm curious to see how this situation plays out. It is very, very sad to her, but unfortunately leopard cubs do have an exceptionally high mortality rate, and more than half of those mortalities can be caused by male leopards or male leopards moving through the area, which is why it will be interesting to see if she adopts that technique of mating with as many males as possible to try and trick them all into believing that they are the father. She's now having, I think, a little bit of a wash. And if she does conceive over the next few days whilst mating with Tingana, then it will take her somewhere in the region of 3 months. It's just a little bit less. It's about 80 to 90 days before she has her cubs. And then she will hide them away for quite a long time before we see any sign of them. Leopards tend to hide them tuck them away in drainage lines or in secret rock crevices, which makes absolute sense, having just spoken about their high mortality rate and the dangers that they face. And of course, she's got to leave them alone to go out hunting on a regular basis.
You can come in from that side. That's where Sean was viewing from. The visual is pretty much the same all around. So, that side you didn't even cross the over this side. They get up and run over to the
Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier, we stopped for that poor Dacre with a very broken leg. And over the next few days, they will need to eat, although most of their focus will be on mating. It's not unheard of for leopards to go those 5 or so days without eating at all. But if there is an opportunity, then they will hunt. And Mavis was wondering if they will hunt together. And possibly not, although they're not really cooperative hunters as a rule. Although there is a chance that if something runs in front of them, being opportunists, they might race towards it and try and catch it. But what they will do is if one of them kills something, here we go, she's up and about. Now let's listen very, very closely. to the sounds that she's going to make. He's still not responding, but I haven't moved just because I wanted to show you the sounds that they're making. I know the visual isn't great, but I just didn't want to interrupt those incredible vocalizations. But there's still no mating action yet, but I'm going to shift forward now that she's stopped making all of that noise so that we can get a bit of a better view now that she's out of the way. There you can see her tail swishing. She's still trying to tempt him. The visual isn't going to be great. How are you doing here? Is that okay for you there? I'll grab the spotlight now. Now, unfortunately, just because of the position that they are in, we really can't get the best view. That's Tingana that you're looking at the moment. He showed absolutely no interest in her flirtation efforts. He's trying to get the car to stay still. He's right on quite a steep part of the drainage line. I'm going to rock forward a little bit. There we go. Lighten up a little bit. Ooh. There you go. Popped his head up. And there you can see Tingana. Isn't he a spectacular boy? There they go. Listen to the sounds they're making.
Sappy, did you copy? You must also make your way in.
Almost like a purr.
Yeah, it is. It's a very, very low purr. It's a combination between a growl and a purr. But it really is quite the sound. And you're right, that's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like if you sort of quadrupled or put a house cat and put it 10 times the size that it is and listen to it purr, that's the sound that they're making. And of course leopards can purr, so that's what she's doing. A flirty, husky purring sound to attract his attention. She has settled down also on the termite mound off to the right of him. I don't think we're going to be able to see her from our position.
Jamie, do you want to come and take this spot quickly before Walker comes?
That would be awesome. We got a good view. Thank you. Thanks, Doug. Doug is just offering us a slightly better position from where we are. Let's just reposition now. It's going to be tricky to loop ourselves around, so let's get that going now. And we'll be able to see a little bit clearer from where he was just off to our left. But he wants us to do that quickly so that another vehicle can come in. That's easier said than done here, but let's give it a go. Okay, sorry. Shall I go? Yeah, I'll go forward. Sorry, I thought you were out. We just shift forward a little bit. Okay, let's quickly get ourselves in there. I can hear them growling again. So let's try and get a nice view of them. Here we go. I'm home free, I think. There we go. Perfect. Let me duck my head down. Can't move too much further forward or we're going to fall down into a drainage line. But we've got this spectacular view of Tingana and his lady friend. And he is... Oh, actually this is Kwatile here, isn't it?
No,
He's still up at the top at the back, yeah. So we were looking at Kwatile in the front. Tingana, it's actually quite funny. He's almost turned his back quite grumpily away from her. I think at the moment her affections are not being welcomed. Oh, she's a beautiful leopard. She really, really is. Keep my head out of the way. This is probably the best positioning we can get at the moment because there's a hole in front of our left tire. So I just have to remember to keep my head out of the way. And now let's wait and see if she decides to show him a little bit more of that affection we were talking about. She's a big female. I'm just looking at her now. She's got quite a big solid neck. I'm not sure how old she is. I'm sure many of the viewers will know. But she is much, much bigger than Shadow is in terms of bulk. And of course she comes from a completely different genetic line. Oh, she's beautiful. She apparently comes from the Vombo females off to the south, so she's not part of the Karula female lineage. Oh, here we go. Is she going to? Oh, she's going to come this way. No big girl. I'm going to just try and get the light balanced right here. She's very, very close to us, which is why you're getting part of the car in frame. She's actually looking very thin as well. Now that I'm seeing her standing next to us, her shoulder blades are quite protruding, her hips are, she is looking thin. She's a stockily built leopard, but she does look hungry. So Mavis, what we were saying about them hunting and feeding, it could well be that she's going to be on the hunt. There you go. Oh, that's a puncture wound. That looks like it might have been from a tooth. There's two of them actually. I would say that's a bite mark. That could be a bite mark, or they could be puncture wounds from horns of something that she was trying to hunt. And it could even have been speculation that those are fresh. It could even have been in defense of her cubs, whatever happened to them. Sure, she looks like she's actually had a lucky escape there. But fear not, it is just flesh wounds. Here we go, let's listen to this. There you go, that's the flirting that I was talking about. She's coming back for more. See how restless she is, trying to attract his attention, and he hasn't actually moved. He has not even looked up at her. He's just taken the bats to the face with her tail. Hello, how are you? Good, thanks. We've got another few minutes. We've just moved into this position, but in a moment I'll pull out so that you can have a good view. Now this, as you can imagine, is a very exciting sighting for all. And there are 3 vehicles here at the moment. But how cool was that behavior? Now it could well be, having had a look at those puncture wounds, just how they were so evenly spaced. It either came from a bite mark, but I think most likely it's horns, something that she acquired while she was hunting. But now, although Tingana has been completely unresponsive for the moment, she may need to keep this up over the next few hours, and probably by at least tomorrow he will start to respond. It can take anywhere from a couple of hours to... Oh, something startled her. And there she goes again. Oh, that is a big male leopard. He really is spectacular. She started the purring again. Here she goes.
Yeah, the male is the big one. The big size difference, yeah. Male is about 2 times bigger and heavier than the female.
There we go. So a bit of, or quite a lot of flirting from Kwatile there. And Tingana has decided to respond by having a quick wash. And that is it. He is completely ignoring her for now. And we'll have to see where they are tomorrow to see if they're going to start mating. Now, there are a couple of vehicles that are waiting to come into this sighting, and as you can imagine, it's amazing for some of the other guests to get to see. So we're going to stay here for another 2 or 3 minutes just to spend a little bit of time with them, and then we're going to move out and make space for other people, especially because it is so very thick in here. Just want to... there she is. I thought I heard her. Popping out again in front of us. Let's see if she starts it up again. Very, very cool. Awesome behavior to see. And now you know what I mean when I said she was flirting with him. And she's now decided to flop down and play coy down here. Oh, that was exhausting work. Very, very sweet. Now, unfortunately, there are about 2 vehicles standing by on the road near us, and I think we've definitely had the best view out of everyone here. Now it is time for us to leave and let other people have a chance to see. But it has been a wonderful evening, and I thank you all for joining us, and at least we've got to spend some time with these very special leopards. So for now, I'm going to say good night to you all, and we will see you tomorrow morning for the sunset safari. Hopefully we get a chance to catch up with these two, and we can see if she's finally been successful in mating with Tingana. And for now, we're going to cross to James to say goodbye, and I'm going to head out. Cheers for now.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Wendy. Sorry you had to leave what sounds like an utterly spectacular sighting, and I'm so glad that Jamie's enthusiasm and profound stoic determination managed to get you into what must have been a very exciting sighting. I'm a little confused myself. The last time I saw Kwatile, or the first and only time I saw Kwatile, she was identified by you, and so I have complete faith that that's who she was. Double spot pattern on each side, and she looked like she was lactating. Now, it seems that the liberal lady is on the way to trying to mate with Tingana again. So I really don't know what's going on. I'd love to hear from you perhaps in the morning what your theories are, and if indeed she is lactating, or perhaps her nipples are just swollen from an overzealous cub last time round. Anyway, we don't know. Well done, Jamie, and a big thank you to her, of course, and to Vium, who's back from his leave, for going over there to Arathusa, making the effort, and probably making the show. Thank you, of course, to that magnificent herd of elephants that we had. It was an excellent time with them. And just to reiterate, I was speaking quietly. There was a lot of debate about interacting with animals. All of the emotions and way that I interact with the bush here, and it's the same for all of us, is to have the least contact and least impact on animal behavior as possible. It's not always possible for us to be totally unimpactful, because obviously we're driving around in a big car, we are talking, there's a damn great aerial on the back of the car, but as far as possible we do try and remain as neutral as possible in this magnificent wilderness area. Thank you to Brian. The thumb, which is now appearing on your screen. Star of the show is the thumb, of course, second to Kwatile and Tingana only. And thank you to Nikki and recently returned Jessica Biffy in the final control. Tara is on leave, Eugene is in his tin hut. It's been a wonderful evening, and thank you very much for all of your questions and comments. Great discussions we've had, and we'll see you tomorrow as the dawn breaks in Africa. Bye-bye, and stay safe and happy wherever you are in the world. See you tomorrow.